Hey y'all, it's Andrea over at Sewspire.com, and today I am here to show you how to sew this absolutely adorable tote bag. I think this could be my favorite design ever, dare I say. I'm calling it the Crescent Moon Tote. It uses, are you ready for it? The birthing method. I know you thought that would never happen on this channel, but it was necessary to achieve this great angle there on the top of the bag. So we are going to do that. Just real quick before we get started, I want to tell you I am going to be taking the month of September off. I promise I'll be back, and I'm going to be putting the time to excellent use. If you want all those details, make sure you watch the outro. Otherwise, I don't want to keep anyone waiting. Let's get started sewing this awesome tote. So for the exterior panel, we're going to begin by crafting the angled portion, which is comprised of 4 pieces, and you're just going to freehand cut this. Begin with a 6 by 10 inch rectangle, and you're going to want to mark that at center at the top there. Okay, so whatever you would like to use to mark it. I have a cutting mat, so I'm just going to work with that, and you're going to come from this bottom left hand corner right at the 6, and you're just going to angle that up so that you end right in the center there. So one side of this rectangle is now 6 inches and one side is 3 inches, and there is your negative space. You're going to need 4 of these in total, and I used a contrasting fabric for mine. You can use the same fabric or contrasting fabric, and then what you will do is position those panels right sides facing and join them at the 3 inch mark, and for this I'm using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. And then you'll go ahead and press that, and you'll craft a total of 2 of those panels. Then for the remaining exterior pieces, you're going to be working with a 6 by 18 piece, which will comprise the lower panel, and a 10 by 18 piece, which will comprise the center panel. And so you're going to begin by positioning the lower and the center panel right sides facing, using 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Join those 2 panels, and then you want to press that, and then we're going to need to craft the strap before we can attach that top angled panel. So for this bag, my straps are originally cut at 6 inches wide by 34 inches long, and you can add additional length if you want a longer handle drop, or likewise shorten those. So this is my standard strap making method with a 3-inch strip of warm and natural quilt batting in the center. I did cut that slightly shorter so I can minimize that bulk at the seam where we will join the panels. Fold that strap in half and press, open that up, and then bring the outer edges inward, press, and fold that over one more time and press. Then stitch down the open edge first and the opposite edge, and then I'm adding a center accent row of stitching on my straps. And that's my finished strap there. So now I want to bring back over my lower and center panels, and then my top angled panel, and going to begin with the lower and center panels, and I want to position the strap on there so that it measures 4.5 inches in from each side, and I am coming down slightly on this strap to where the batting meets the fabric, just because I do not like a really long strap on my bag, but I want to leave myself plenty of room to reinforce that strap in the seam. Now you'll notice this strap is inverted there, and that's because when I turn it up, it will sit nicely on the shoulder. So I have that pinned in place 4.5 inches from the left and the right hand sides. And now I'm going to bring over my angled panel and position that right side's facing at center on top of that. And there is just a little bit of overhang there on the left and the right. That is on purpose, and that is so you do not come in too short with those panels. In case you're a little generous with your seam allowance, we will true that up once we have the whole panel crafted. So I'm just going to center that on there, pin it in place, and then join these panels and attach the straps using the 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Okay, then I'm going to press everything. And now what you want to do is true up those sides. And I just used my ruler and my mat there. And get rid of that little bit of overhang. And now you're going to take this finished panel and use it as a pattern to cut out 2 of your interior panels, as well as 2 pieces of interfacing. I am using a heavyweight Pellon 910, I believe, for this. Quilt batting will work great, or if there's another interfacing that you really like, go for it. You're just going to want a little bit of stability for the exterior only. The interior is fine, unlined. And for my interior, I use that exterior to trace out 2 cotton panels, which we will work with momentarily, but I want to finish this exterior panel, so I'm going to take my interfacing and position that underneath. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim up my handles because my center panel is a light fabric and I don't want to see those darker handles there. So just going to line everything up, make sure that those seams lie nice and flat. And then once I'm happy with how everything is positioned on there, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch across the bottom and the top of that center panel, and this will also help reinforce the handles. And that's what the exterior panel looks like when it's all pieced together. You're going to craft 2 of these. I'm going to set these aside and show you how to craft the interior. So remember, you will have used that exterior panel as your pattern piece to cut out 2 interior panels that have that nice angle at the top. And then I want to add just a couple pockets. So these pockets are 18 inches wide by 14 inches tall, and I pressed over the top and the bottom edges and then folded that in half, and I'm just going to top stitch across that pocket. That's my finished pocket there, and then I want to come up 5 inches from the base of that interior panel. I'm going to divide my pocket in thirds. I press that to create dividers that I could stitch along. So I'm going to begin by attaching the pocket across the base and then dividing that into thirds. Alright, and for whatever reason my pocket's a little short over here, but it is within my seam allowance, so I'm not going to sweat it. I'll just make sure that I capture that in the seam allowance. So now what I want to do is take the second interior body panel, which if you wanted you could also add pockets to. I don't need that many pockets for this particular bag. So I'm just going to line that all up, right sides facing, pin that in place, and then from the bottom corners I'm going to notch out 3-inch squares from the bottom left and right hand corners to give this bag a 6-inch depth. Alright, and then I'm gonna take this interior and I'm going to stitch down the left and the right sides using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to stitch across the base using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I am not stitching within these notches. Okay, I've stitched the left, the right, and across the base. Now I want to bring up those corners and align the side and the base seam and then stitch across that open raw edge using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance. I'll repeat that process for the other side, lining the base and side seams and stitching right across. The interior is complete. Now we're going to bring over the exterior panels. Now bring over your 2 exterior panels, and you're going to need to notch out the 3-inch corners from those panels as well. And this is just coming from that lower portion, 3 inches on the left and the right hand side. And then you'll position those exterior panels right sides facing, lining everything up. You're going to want to pay special attention to your side panels and do your best to try and align those. They don't always work out perfectly, but you can try. And then same thing, using that nice generous 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, stitch down the right, down the left, and then across the base. Do not stitch the corners, but once you have attached the sides and the base, you will join up those corners by aligning the side seam and the base seam. Okay, I do like to trim away this excess, especially when I'm using this really thick interfacing, and I do that before I fashion those corners. I'm going to align that side seam with the base seam, make sure that everything's sitting nice and flat inside of there, and stitch across there to fashion that corner. Okay, now the exterior is complete and it's nice and rigid with that Pellon lining. Everything looks great to me. I'm super excited to see how this goes. So I want to tuck those handles on the inside like that, and I'm going to slip that interior right sides facing inside of that exterior, which is still turned wrong side out. And I'm going to begin by aligning that side seam. I want to do the same thing on the other side there. Then I'm just going to work my way around, pinning everything until I have that top angled edge all aligned and that interior fits nicely inside of that exterior. And once I have that situated in there, I'm going to put this up on the machine deck using 5/8 of an inch seam allowance, and I'm going to sew all the way around this. Okay, I made it all the way around. I just want to check and make sure that nothing slipped on me or puckered up in any way. I should have the Pellon and 2 layers of material, and that all looks great. I am going to go ahead and trim this up as well. Now we are almost done, and I bet you're wondering, how in the world is she getting this bag right side out? Okay, so I'm going to give you a couple options. You can open up a side seam and flip this right side out, or you can open up the base seam and flip this right side out, okay? And I think I'm going to opt for the base seam of the interior. Just going to come in with my seam ripper there, and once you get a couple of those stitches loose and just tug just a little bit, it opens up nice. You always have the option of just leaving this open, but my preferred method, if I have to burr the bag, which I know you thought was never going to happen on this channel, but it was necessary to achieve this angle at the top for this design. So my preferred method is to attach all the seams so that you know that everything fits nice and neat, and then open them back up if necessary. Okay. So hopefully this here will be enough space to turn this. And that is probably 7 inches there, okay? So just work really slowly. You're going to want to reach inside, try and crumble up that exterior as much as you can so that it fits through the opening without causing much damage. So once you get that turned around, go ahead and poke out all your corners, press if you like, and then you're going to need to stitch up this opening. You can do that on the machine, or you can hand stitch if you enjoy hand stitching. I do not, so I'm going to stitch it on the machine, and I just need to pull out the little threads that I ripped out there. But I do, again, really feel like by opening up that seam, I am ensured that I have plenty of seam allowance there to turn that, and everything will stay nice and even for me, and this will sit nice inside of that bag. So it's a little bit extra work, but in the end, again, I think it gives you the nicest finished look. So I'm going to press this, close up the hole, and then fit everything back inside, and I'll meet you back here to top stitch. Okay, so I've sealed up the interior where I turned that. I'm really happy with how that looks. And I've pressed everything as well as I could. I do wish I had some spray starch though, so I will at some point be coming back in with another press for this. So my 3 interior slip pockets, the exterior is gorgeous, the shape is amazing. Now you have the option when we top stitch here, if you want, you can stitch these handles in place and that will reinforce them again. I do really like the look of that. It's equally as cute like that, but I think I am going to opt to stitch my handles in place. So I want to pin those. And then I'm just going to put this up on the machine deck and stitch all the way around that top edge. I am going to reinforce at the handles. Oh my gosh, guys, I love this bag. I am absolutely positively thrilled with how this turned out. Thank you so much for sewing with me. As always, it was my absolute pleasure. So I want to give you a little bit more information about why I'm taking the month of September off. First and foremost, my sweet Megan is a senior in high school and we are in the midst of the college application process. So I want to be there 100% for her to guide her through this process. It's a huge decision. And if any of you have ever navigated the college application process, this is my 3rd time, and it still is going to take a tremendous amount of my attention, okay? And then the second reason is my youngest Isabel just entered middle school. She's trying out for the track team. We are hopeful she's going to make the team, and I'm going to spend a lot of time in the car driving her to and from her practices and then watching her run. So I'm going to be there for the kids first and foremost, but then on the back end of this, what you're not going to see is I really am going to be looking at all the content that I've recorded for, it is almost 4 years, yikes, since I launched the channel. In fact, when I come back to you, it will be our 4-year anniversary as a Sewspire community. So I want to look at everything that I've taught you to date, see if there are any holes, see where we can improve things, really look at the requests. I know I've missed some of those requests along the way. I'm going to be going back through old emails. I'm going to be going back through old design notebooks. And I'm also learning how to use an absolutely state-of-the-art software package, if you want to call it. It's all cloud-based, but I'm seriously considering investing $1,000 in this software. That's for a 1-year license. And I really do believe it's going to allow me to create exceptional content for this community. So I'm testing that with AMC, which kicks off on Sunday. There are 5 seats left. If you're lucky, you can grab them. Otherwise, that Patreon opportunity and the AMC opportunity is going to be sold out through the month of September, so that I can really, 1, learn how to use this software, and 2, cater to that community and the AMC experience, okay? All of that will benefit the greater community, I promise, all right? So hang in there with me. Let me take this 4-week period to get ahead, to take care of the kids, and learn how to use this software, all right? I would just want to thank you again for sewing with me. If you feel like you're going to have Sewspire withdrawals, I'll still be hanging out on the Sewspire Facebook group page, posting to Instagram, and hopefully writing a little bit on Sewspire.com. I love to write and I have some ideas there. So keep an eye on the social media, all right? If not, we're going to catch up in October and celebrate 4 years of Sewspire. So until then, as always, please know the creative genius in me will be celebrating the creative genius in you. Have an awesome September, everyone.